Good afternoon, everyone. It's always hard to interrupt really great conversation and networking that's happening in the room, but we also have the incredible privilege of learning from folks who are doing incredibly important work in our nation and our world. And so I want to make sure that we have the full time to be able to learn from them. So as people are finding their seats, let me just quick orient and introduce myself. My name is Cynthia Leitz. I serve as Dean at ASU's Watts College of Public Service and Community Solutions. So our Salute to Service celebration that spans about a week and a half is deeply important to our college because service is basically the heart and soul of what we do. Now, we often talk about service in our college as being a willingness to put the needs of another above or before your own. So we see that service is the willingness to put the needs of another above your own. And we often define service in our college a bit more broadly. So we celebrate and prepare undergraduate and graduate students for careers in government. That could be local, state, federal government. We prepare folks for elected roles as well as appointed roles and see many ways in which those leaders are an incredibly important part of our democracy. We also celebrate service that might look like students who are placed at a local nonprofit that might be serving folks who are struggling with homelessness, or one of our nonprofit parks and recreation students, social work students who might be providing direct care provision for somebody in need. And then we also do work to affect policy and to engage in prevention, ultimately with the desire to build more vibrant, healthy, equitable, and sustainable communities. So with all that said, while we prepare and celebrate all of that service, when you use and center on a definition of service that says it involves putting the needs of another above your own, I can't think of any type of service than military service that does that any better than the others. It is an incredible honor to be with the four of you today, to be facilitating a conversation where you can share with us sort of what sparked your interest in service, what keeps you going. We're going to talk even a little bit about the hard parts. And we'll close with some advice that you may have. We have lots of students in the room. We also have some faculty and staff here as well. And I know they're really anxious to learn from the things that you have to share. So I would like to start by saying thank you. Thank you for your service, for your leadership, and the ways in which you're looking to help us prepare the next generation of servant leaders. All right, with that said, let's get started. So I thought it'd be nice to start with you each introducing yourselves. We'll start right here if that's okay. Share your name, position, role, and then if you could talk about each as you go through this first part, what's one thing that you particularly enjoy about the act of service?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Command Sergeant Major Aaron Bulow. I currently serve as the Command Senior Enlisted Leader of the Arizona National Guard. For those of you who are not familiar with the National Guard, National Guard's unique, unlike the other service members that are up here, the great enlisted leaders we have here. The National Guard we have an adjutant general, we have Army, we have Air Force, and we all work for the governor of the state of Arizona, and that's what we call Title 32 versus Title 10. So state sovereignty, we report to the governor if we have any type of emergency or if anything comes about. However, we can be federalized to also go on Title 10. I would say the one thing that I enjoy most about my position is soldier care. There's no doubt. You know, when you reach E9, you can progress from battalion to brigades, from groups to wings or whatever, but you can't get promoted again. You may support a higher ranking officer at some point in time, but soldier care, your sphere of influence, having the authority to take care of soldiers and airmen, and the best way to do that, and what I enjoy most, is just by walking around, leaving the desk and not getting bogged down with paperwork and admin work. There's people for that, and it's not a bad thing if you're one of those people. But walking around and truly having a pulse of what the formation is feeling. And it's amazing, if you sit down, you can find out all kinds of stuff, all the pay issues, all the problems and everything else. And then the benefit that I have is then acting on it, and that's my leadership style. I thrive on results and action, and I take immediate action. I give immediate feedback. So I went to Kuwait to visit some of our deployed soldiers, and I found out there was a soldier that was an E4 and has been paid for as an E2 for 2 years, and couldn't get it fixed, couldn't get the pay fixed. So I made a few phone calls and put some pressure on a few people, and we were able to get the person paid in a matter of 2 weeks. And now that soldier wants to reenlist again. So it's soldier care is definitely what I find important to me. So.
Good afternoon. My name is Jesse Townsend. I'm the Command Sergeant Major of the Army's Intelligence Center of Excellence in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, about 3 hours south of here. And I am also the Military Intelligence Corps Command Sergeant Major, responsible for advising and helping shape the intel force for 17,776 enlisted MI soldiers. Why do I do this, and why do I love doing this? It's along the same lines. It is exactly the definition of service, right? I very quickly, when I joined the Army, I immediately bonded to the values of our Army and the values of service, and I was taken care of by a great non-commissioned officer, and that's what inspired me to want to be the best caregiver, caretaker, trainer, developer, leader that I could be of people. And coming from a very small town in southeast Georgia, I got in a space where I needed an adventure, and I needed to be challenged more than that small town could provide me. So that's what drew me to the Army and inspired me to do what I do, because it's all about taking care of people, taking care of soldiers, giving them the opportunity every single day to do what we do for our nation is just an incredible responsibility, and I take a great pride in doing it.
Hey, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sergeant Major Jason Davey, Station Sergeant Major at Marine Corps Station Yuma. First off, I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It's great to come down here and engage with the students and the staff and faculty. And thank you, Doctor, for hosting this panel. I think it was very meaningful last year, and I look forward to it as well again today. I'm not going to bore you with the daily ins and outs on my position as the Station Sergeant Major, but I'm going to get down to the brass tacks of it as far as what I enjoy about the service. It's the same thing that I joined the Marine Corps, 28 years ago, is that just to be a Marine. Right? When people ask me what I do, I tell them I'm a Marine. I don't tell them I'm a Sergeant Major. I don't tell them I've been in for 28 years. You ask a pilot in the Marine Corps, what does he do? He's not going to start off by saying he's a pilot. Everyone's a Marine. Start off being a Marine. And it still rings true with me today. Still that same sense of pride that I had back when I was, just on boot camp leave, walking around the mall. And I don't want to sound like it's a Marine recruiting poster or an ad or anything like that nature, but it's just that sense of service, sense of pride, sense of being belonging to something better than yourself. To me, I'm still having fun doing it day in and day out. And until I don't, or until they tell me to go away, I'm going to continue to keep doing that. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon. Command Sergeant Major Mark Miliari here, the Command Sergeant Major for U.S. Army Yuma Proving Ground. So first off, like my battle buddy Jason right here, over there at Yuma, I want to say I'm really grateful for the opportunity today to be up here and share and engage with you all and share a little bit of the story that I have, I would say accumulated for the past 24 years, right? So what I do really, I think we do a lot of things over there at Yuma Proving Ground, but the biggest thing is we ensure that whatever you have in the future, when you become lieutenants, whatever your soldiers are going to use, wear, utilize out there in the battlefield is going to be up for the standards and is safe, right? We test them. So Yuma Proving Ground has 3, we are in charge of the extreme weather area. So we have a directorate in Alaska to do cold regions test center. The Tropical Test Center in Panama, and then of course the desert, which is here in Yuma. So we are here, and I am so proud to be a part of the organization that ensures that every single equipment, item, clothing, software, whatever you're using when you go out there in combat has been tested in one of the test centers in ATEC. Okay, what drives me to continue to serve? So, the Army has done a lot for me. When I started, I had a duffel bag. I went to boot camp. That's it. And now here I am. And because of that, it has been my lifelong, I would say, dream or goal is to continue to mentor and coach every single subordinate leader that I will have under my I guess, influence. Because I don't have a command. I'm not an officer, right? So continuing the mentorship and being able to affect and influence young soldiers of all ranks gives me satisfaction, and I continue to do that as much as the Army would like me to. So thank you.
That was spectacular. So I heard lots of things there. What is the best part of serving is people, a sense of belonging, the work, the actual work, a passion for the work, and knowing that your work is making a difference by ensuring that people are equipped with safe and effective equipment or whatever that may be. And at the end of the day, the thread that I hear from all four of you is the people. And the ways in which you at one point were served or taken care of by another that caused you to then want to pay that forward. I love that. All right, so now I'm going to ask you, a couple of you got at this a little bit in your remarks, but now I'm going to have you take a step back. Think about even before you started your careers in the military, what was it that sparked that interest in public service? Could have been practical. Could have been it wasn't actually about service. You needed to advance forward in life. Could have been that there was a person who modeled service for you, or some other significant moment that brought you into this work. And for the next couple of questions, we'll just sort of take them as people feel inspired to jump in, so we don't have to go in order. And then the last one, we'll kind of come back down for the last question. But for these couple in the middle, think about where you were, what you were thinking and feeling, and what sparked your decision to say yes to service.
For me, my passion for service was sparked by my grandfather, and also my other family members that had served in the military. My grandfather was a World War II vet, someone who I deeply admired and respected. I'd spend the summers with my grandparents, and my grandfather was with the 11th Airborne Division, World War II, and he jumped into the Philippines on the Los Baños raid and helped rescue 2,000 interned prisoners of war. And he didn't share a lot of those stories initially until later in life, but I always respected my grandfather, his service, and I kind of wanted to be like him. And I also had my great-grandfather had served in World War I, a friend of the family in the Korean War, relatives in the Vietnam War. So I wanted to carry on the tradition. It was important for me to do that. And then also, gosh, even as a young kid, whenever I saw the American flag or we'd go to a sporting event and I heard the national anthem, I get goosebumps. You know, it's just, and it still does this to me today. So it means something to me. And that's why I put on the uniform, and that's where the passion was and is today. So.
Yeah, for me, it was also, grandparents, both my grandfathers, served. Both of my all of my great grandfathers served. Uncles served, and actually, what really was growing up on coastal Georgia. I thought I was going to join the Navy. I grew up in the rivers, connecting the coastal rivers to the ocean, just north of Kings Bay submarine base, and had all intentions. My father, my family owned a boat dealership. Had all intentions of joining the Navy. The Navy never called, so. I also grew up in the woods, and the Army was the next best thing at the time, from my perspective. But I mean, I had a great grandfather that was an all Navy boxer. Another great grandfather that was a cobbler, made boots during World War II in the Navy. So that really started the spark. But really, then it was the understanding of something greater than myself, something greater than a small town. And it was that just the commitment, understanding what service really meant. And that's what got me going.
So it's kind of funny. For me, I grew up in Colorado Springs, and if anybody knows anything about that area, it's very heavy with the Army and Air Force. And there's probably not another Marine besides being a recruiter or maybe an I&I unit 1,000 miles from there. So everyone always said, why did you join the Army or the Air Force? But similar to the gentleman next to me here, it was my dad, my father. I came from a long line of Marines with my dad and uncles. My dad fought in Quezon, Contian, suffered some physical injuries, definitely some mental injuries. But he always spoke very highly of the Marine Corps, and he always said that, he would not change a thing if he could. So even though his body and his mind was wrecked from what he'd been through, it ended up costing him his life at a very early age. But he said he wouldn't change a thing for his time in the service. And I'm thinking, here's a man who's pretty busted up and not doing too well. It must be one heck of an organization for him to say that he wouldn't change a thing if he had the opportunity to go back and do it again.
So for me, it's not really a spark, but a light bulb. All right. So I was sitting in an apartment in California in my desperation and stupor and just being pissed off of where I'm at, no job, no prospect. The commercial came in, be all you can be. And I'm like, sounds like it's gonna save both my problems. Be able to get out of this house so I can have a home and then get a job. So I called the recruiter. And a month later, by only being 3 months in America, by the way, I was in boot camp and starting my Army career. Okay, so I thought I was gonna only spend 5 years, but after my 18th month, when I get promoted to a sergeant, and I was able to help 2 of my soldiers in their challenges, I found that is my purpose, to help the soldiers. So from then on out, I decided I was gonna stay in and serve, and that's where I'm at.
So I love hearing the variety of pathways to service. We heard from multiple leaders here about the legacy of service in a family and how we're inspired by grandparents, parents, friends, our community, because the pride, I see the pride sort of exuding through this group. And when you see that, it inspires you to say yes and step up. I also love that sometimes it's meeting a need in practical, and you find that pride and that purpose actually along the way. And so I think particularly for our students here today, many of you are here because you have a legacy of service in your family. But for some of you, you're the first person who's gonna step up in this particular way. And I hope you feel inspired as I do by the idea that that potentially creates a legacy for your family moving forward. So now let's get into it. We're talking about a lot of good stuff, and I see again the pride exuding from this group. But we know that service is, while we do it for others, it is good for us in many ways. It is hard, though. Putting the needs of another above yourself is a sacrifice, and it can create some challenges. So I wondered if you each could talk a little bit about one thing that's challenged you, or a challenge that you faced during your career in the military. And along with that, talk about what helps keep you going despite some of the challenges associated with this important but hard work.
If you don't mind if I can just jump on that one real fast here. So I'll admit right up front that it's not only was it a challenge, but something I failed at, downright failed at. As I was progressing through the Marine Corps, through the ranks a few years in, and it's the balance or the management of your personal life and the professional life. And it ended up costing me a marriage, at the time. But I like to attribute it to when I talk to young Marines about how to be able to effectively manage that balance. Is think of it kind of like a checking account, as far as when you're doing deployments, you're doing SDA back-to-back tours, things of that nature. You're withdrawing from that checking account. And then as far as keeping that balance, you have to put deposits in that checking account in order to maintain that effective balance. So when you have birthdays, you have anniversaries, you have graduations, is to actually be the mature leader and seek out the opportunities to attend those things. In my mind at the time, I was a young staff sergeant, E6, E7. In my mind, I was taking care of my family by being deployed. By doing special duty assignments, and I didn't make those deposits in that account along the way, and eventually it's going to catch up with you if you can't effectively manage
I'm going to jump in here just real quick before we move on. I just want to first start by saying thank you, because it can be hard to be vulnerable sometimes, right? And share some of the difficult parts of your story of service. And I think what you're sharing is extremely important for our folks to understand, because we can have an intentionality as we enter into this space. And I like the framing of the deposits. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna start on this end. So, for me, one thing that that kind of jogs my memory very vividly, and it's gonna be a war story a little bit, and it really highlights the importance of leaders, right? So when after during my first deployment, about a month in, when we were doing a patrol and we got hit with IED and killed my team leader, I was really, really mad. So I was ready to go out and do some crazy things, the whole thing, right? Because you get hit in your emotion. And then I remember my first sergeant just grabbing me like, hey man, look, stop. You got 2 more soldiers that need you. And so from that, I was like, you know what? That's correct. Instead of being mad, focus on the 2 soldiers that are hurting. And it kind of highlights the importance of like mentors and leaders that you really look up to, who could really rescue you when you're in the dark. So thank you.
As you face the emotional toll, and I can understand the anger, but you had to have perspective about the others who still needed you at that point and needed a leader to sort of get you through that period of time. And I'm so sorry about your loss. Yeah. Others.
Yeah, for me, it was, I was in Iraq in 2007 to 8 at I think it was a 7th or 8th deployment to the Middle East. And my son was born while I was in Iraq. And that was very, I expected to be home. We planned it out for mid-tour leave, but life happened and the war happened, and that's where I was. So my son was born in Green Bay, Wisconsin, while I was in a half of a tent in northern Iraq. And on my way back, but didn't make it. But really, that hit me real hard for a long time. But over time, what I really have come to appreciate and understand that in a business where you want to be, or you have a drive or a goal to be a high performer, whether that be in public service, whether that be in service to your nation, whether that be in private industry, those that perform and are at the top of their game, there's going to be some significant sacrifice to get to that level. It's just a reality of the nature of being in the business of high performing or high performance, but it's challenging. So you can say you want a balanced life. Very hard to balance things when you're expected to be there at the front and expected to be at the leading edge of every single action and thing that happens. So I hate to say that not as a cautionary tale, but it's one of those things we have to accept in the reality of not just military service, but any service industry. There are sacrifices that you have to make.
I think that's really important because it sets realistic expectations so people understand what they're getting to as they go there. And what's also important is that as we struggle with the challenges associated with the sacrifice, what I also hear you saying is it's also the thing that gets each of you up in the morning, right? It's that Absolutely. Making a difference, having the relationships. It's the very thing that is the hard thing, is the thing that keeps you going. Yeah. Go ahead.
For me, much like the other sergeants majors here, it's been the work-life balance. It's been family. I might have told some of you earlier, I spent the first, 11 and a half, almost 12 years with Joint Special Operations Command, 10 years in the Ranger Regiment, coming in the military. And I know it's hard to believe, but this is when we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have internet, we didn't have social media, we didn't have that stuff. So in the Ranger Regiment, you had to be to work within 1 hour if you got alerted. You had to be wheels up within 4 hours, going to an unknown location, and you couldn't give out any information. Most of the time you didn't even know. You just loaded up and you went. And then your family would watch the news a few hours later and hope that they didn't see you as a KIA or whatever coming across the television. So that was very tough. It cost me a marriage. And also having that closeness with my older son. Now, a few years later here, I have younger children. My wife also served in the Arizona Guard. She served 3 tours overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan, about 5 years in combat. Her last mission, she deployed with SEAL Team 10. And she's a Black Hawk helicopter pilot. And at 17 years in the Guard, she said one of these careers needs to give if we're going to raise our children properly. I will take a back burner for you right now. And that's a huge sacrifice when you think about it. And so I had an opportunity to redeem myself as a parent, as a father, and as a husband, and I do my best to balance it now. I don't take for granted what my family does, because I realize how important it is, and that's what I focus on. So.
So important. All your stories about even lessons learned, right, from some of the challenges along the way. The previous panel, there was a question towards the end around mental health services and support for folks in the military. You're under a tremendous amount of stress. I don't know if balance even is possible, but I appreciate that it's at your forefront of your mind and you're trying, right? I wonder if you could share some with our group about how you personally cope, the things that you do when the stress gets hard, when you're feeling the push and pull between family, when you experience a very difficult traumatic event. What do you do to cope with those challenges? And were there times you didn't do that and you sort of learned through that the need to be intentional about infusing a sense of coping into the work? So let's dig into like the emotions and how do we move forward from the challenges associated with this sacrifice?
I'll start. So I would first say that the first emotion that comes to mind, right, when you talk about it, is how do you get yourself in the right frame of mind? Is, you know, I go back to the quote: if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And truly, you have to love this to want to do this the right way. And if you love what you do, then everything somehow just seems to work out. From an emotional standpoint, from a mental standpoint, from a physical standpoint, if you absolutely love what you do, it works itself out. But that's hard, right? Because then you have to come to terms with very quickly as you progress, especially. I personally am not a big fan of the term work-life balance, because as a leader, balance is an unfair, inappropriate term. Balance infers 50-50. A relationship that is equal between two things, 50-50. And as a leader, we don't operate in that space. You can't give 50% of your time to your leadership responsibilities and get 50% back. It's more about proportion, a qualitative versus quantitative term, in the sense of if I focus on the quality of the time that I give my family is either equal to or greater than the quality of time that I give to my Army, or my joint service, then I know I'm in a good space. And that is really what keeps me going at the end of the day.
So
I just want to summarize that real quick because I think really important nuggets in there. So getting away from an equation that says work-life balance is even possible and even has to happen to be able to have quality impact at work and quality relationships at home. And the first thing you also said that I want to bring back to our attention is that you love the work. And actually, this has come up in multiple different questions from all four of you, that when you love the work, it doesn't feel like work. And it makes that need for balance a little bit different at that point. And so in some ways, that love of the work is like a protective factor, helping to mediate some of the challenges associated with the stress. Really good. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add, just real fast here, you know, it can be a struggle, especially as you're coming up through the ranks initially, as far as some of the challenges and frustrations that you experience, but you never complain up and you never complain down. All right, so you have your peer group, your peer focus that you can kind of vent with and come up with solutions to problems. But you know, as you progress, it gets lonelier at the top, so you have to be able to develop those coping mechanisms to be able to not show that frustration, to show that anger, or to complain up the chain of command or down the chain of command.
Some emotional strength around that, and thinking about the ways in which you get your needs met in different ways than complaining up and down. But yet you got to get it out, right? you have a thought about how you do that?
I'm sorry, what was it?
You got to get out that stress and that frustration. So if you're not complaining up and down, what do you do with that?
Yeah, there's different ways, obviously, that personality, dictates as far as what person does to relieve stress, whether it's physical fitness, physical training, hobbies, interests, or just getting away and get to a quiet space, reading books, things of that nature.
For me, for some reason, I don't know why, but I thought about it after before my first deployment. I thought about the risk of what I'm gonna encounter and so on and so forth. So I kind of came up with two things, and it really centers on knowing yourself, right? So I kind of boiled down to like a framework. So one, my recommendation is you got to know yourself so you can understand what you can and cannot do, period, point blank. And if you can do it, then do it. Do the best you can. And if you cannot do it, let it go. Let it be. There's many a times where I get a call when I was a platoon sergeant in Germany, when I'm dealing with all the soldier, soldier misconduct a lot, that my sergeant major would call me to the office. And a lot of my battle buddies would be dreading about that. Like, oh my God, what is he going to say? I'm going to get chewed out, so on and so forth. And in my head, it's like, I'm probably going to get that. But I only stressed one time. And then when I was in front of the sergeant major, it was not even that bad. I got chewed out, but you know what? I felt like it wasn't really what I was expecting. So basically, I was catastrophizing it. That's the word. So I'm gonna tell you, if ever you're gonna be in front of your commanding officer, or whatever, just go. Don't worry about it. Just take it. And when they start saying things, just say Roger, and I think it'll stop them off the tracks. So do what you can, and when you can do it, do the best you can, so that you don't look back and have some, and have some, oh my God, I could have done this, I could have done that. Don't. Just continue moving forward. Learn from your mistake, but don't live in it. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of interesting. I'd say my way to vent is through physical fitness, going for a run, going for a walk. I know we're probably not supposed to say this, but it's nothing bad like alcohol. But it's I compartmentalize, because what I do is I reflect back on the number of friends and soldiers and airmen that I've seen that we've lost and are without their families over the 30 years of service. And no matter how tough it gets, I think, well, you know what? I'm going home to my family tonight. I'm sleeping in a bed tonight. I'm not deployed and I'm not getting shot at right now. So how bad do I really have it? You know what? So I'm a little tired. Okay, go take a nap. Go home. Tell the boss I'm going to be in late or whatever. But then also what I started doing, I've done it now 1 year. So last summer, I think I was trying to win the most amount of leave award or something. I had 120 some days of leave on the book, and my boss is like, you need to take some leave. So I took 3.5 weeks of leave, and I put down my government phone. My boss has my personal cell, and I said, call me, ma'am, if you need me. Unless I see your name on there, I'm not picking up the phone. And I spent that time with my family, and it was great. It was therapeutic. It was great. I was on a lake. I was fishing. I was doing all kinds of goofy stuff with my family and children and stuff, and did a cross-country road trip, which became even more stressful after a while. So, but Clark Griswold. But anyway, it was great. And then after a week, when she didn't call me or text me, then I got worried. Then I started calling, texting my boss, like, hey, what's wrong? Why aren't you calling me or texting me? But no, I found that to be therapeutic. And it's something that I'm going to do in the future. It's that's what works for me.
Really great. So I hear a lot about physical fitness, talking, getting it out, boundary setting, enjoying the things you can. I also hear a lot about cognitions, the things that you say to yourselves, the things that you think to be able to cope with the challenges associated with the job. All right, I'd love for the four of you now to think about, and then we'll open up for questions in just a little bit here. Yep, we'll do that in just a minute. So think about folks, particularly here in the audience or maybe watching online, who are aspiring to the kind of work that you do. What are the skills, or qualities that you think a future leader in the military should have? And how would you recommend they go about achieving or accomplishing getting those attributes so that they would be successful as the four of you? Skills or
Okay, I guess
attributes?
you can start it. In my point of view, especially for non-commissioned officers, I guess I would say being able to type fast. And the reason why I say that is that if you think about how much time you're gonna do to write reports and so on and so forth, it'll take majority of your time, and you have no time for that. You have to be a leader in front of your soldiers while they're doing training. They got to be there, but those reports got to be written, right? So being able to type faster allows you to save that time and be able to communicate better when it's needed. So that's number one. Second one is like I would say being able to do some, it's the Ishikawa diagram for all you college folks right here. It's like a root cause analysis, right? Sometimes you got to be able to do that. So sometimes when you have a problem set, you got to kind of like look at the end state and start walking yourself back quicker, and then writing it down and be able to plan, do the 8-step training model and so on and so forth in your head a little bit before you can refine it with the rest of your team. So in my opinion, those three things help me, because when I'm in the office, I got to deal with all my soldiers. That, it's 24/7. So being able to do things real quick, do some Excel work, makes me more efficient, in my opinion. Thank you.
So I'll just say, I made a comment last year when I was out here based on an observation that I had earlier on in the day, and I saw the same observation here today, and that it's the servant leadership, and what that looks like in the most basic form that you have with servant leadership. And you see all these, these installation commanders that are sitting before you here today, and you watch them throughout the day, and they're holding doors for the different students, RTC students. These gentlemen have drivers, they have secretaries, they have staffs that are half the size of this room, but yet they actually go out of their way to hold open, hatches for you all, for me. They certainly don't have to do that, but it's servant leadership in its most basic form. But there's a reason behind it as well, because it gives them an opportunity to engage with those junior personnel, where it's junior enlisted in a shop, in a battalion, actually be able to make that eye contact with somebody, give them a greeting, and it just, it takes 10, 15, 20 seconds to do something like that, but something in very, very basic form, servant leadership.
So our new Sergeant Major of the Army, Mike Weimer, he just, one of his first conversations he had with the Army force and our senior sergeants major was reminding our leaders, our NCOs especially, but really all our leaders, that we must be brilliant at the basics. So I would address my answer to the soon-to-be lieutenants, soon-to-be ensigns, so cadets and midshipmen. So every unit that you arrive to, you can bet money against that NCO or that petty officer in charge of the soldier, the service member, if you will, in that formation, has been taught the 4 R's. And I would ask you to just consider is how do you reinforce the 4 R's for that formation, right? So the skill, I hope we know the 4 R's, but being in the right place, in the right time, in the right uniform, with the right attitude. If you can do those 4 things, if your service members are doing those 4 things every day, you are going to win. You're going to succeed. Those set the fundamentals and the foundation for every single thing that every unit does every single day. And master those 4 R's. Ensure your soldiers, your service members master those 4 R's, and everything else will work itself out. It just will, guaranteed.
My advice would be look for diversity in assignments. Be a lifelong learner. For myself, I didn't have the opportunity to go to college until I had about 15, 16 years, and then it took me a few more years to complete my bachelor's degree. Once I completed my bachelor's, I completed my master's, then I've taken some doctoral classes also, and it's, I got a little scared off though in that program, but and then the other thing is put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. Like Some people don't like public speaking. They absolutely hate it. They're afraid of it. So, and as leaders, we're all guilty of it. We get to a certain point in our careers and then we're like, okay, we only want to do the things we're good at that won't make us look bad in front of the formation and we can excel at. We'll hand it off to an XO or everybody else, that can handle that stuff we don't want to do. But, even the leaders that are here today, all the way up to our general, and I know he does it, we all place ourselves in uncomfortable situations sometimes and we do things we don't want to do because we come out of it more resilient, we come out of it better. And I think that's important, and that's how we learn and grow. And I even see the adjutant general do it. She's brilliant. She's a great leader. And when I came on as her senior enlisted leader, she goes, I struggle with the operational piece of the military. She goes, I need you for that. And we're a great team. So I compliment her in that aspect. So if no matter what it is for you as you're going up through the ranks, but some people are going to grasp things faster than you or better than you, or just have a different experience. Challenge yourself, whatever you're uncomfortable with, and you'll know your strengths and weaknesses. If you don't, just ask that person to left or right, and they'll be happy to tell you real quickly. And then challenge yourself to grow.
So great. So some of the skills and attributes I hear are lifelong learning and challenging oneself. The 4 R's, focusing on the basics so you're always prepared. The servant leadership content is particularly inspiring about what that looks like really in any space at any moment of the day. And I actually love the practical typing in Excel. I actually talk about, I'm also a very fast typist, and it does allow me to answer my about 200 emails a day very quickly. So really helpful. Even when we're publishing as a researcher, I'm just able to sort of get things on the digital page pretty quickly. So the practical things absolutely matter too. All right, one last question before we open it up to questions that may come from the floor. If you had one piece of advice for the folks here online or here in the room about getting prepared for their potential career that may look like yours, what's one piece of advice that you might give them?
So I'll just jump in right off the bat here. I had a mentor when I was a young Sergeant Major 4 or 5 years ago. Some of you may have heard of him. He's very famous in the Marine Corps. Sergeant Major Bradley Castle. There's a statue of him in D.C. of him being carried out of a hell house in Iraq with an M9 in one hand and a K-bar in the other, and took some pretty significant injuries. Wrote a book afterwards called My Men Are My Heroes, outstanding book. But he just retired a few years ago, not too many years ago. So he was actively walking around. He was the 1 MEF Sergeant Major at the time. I was a Squadron Sergeant Major down at in Miramar on a 53 Squadron, and he's walking around. He can't go upstairs because he has all the problems with his legs, but he definitely goes out there on the flight line. Likes to make it around and talk to the Marines, all about the Marines. And we're walking down the 53 Squadron there to the different aircraft, and the air crew are putting the guns up on the ramps, the 50 cals on the back of the aircraft. And he goes up there and he's like, "Can you show me how to operate this weapon?" And the kids started getting into it, and like, "Yes," and he's like, "No, show me like everything. How do you aim it? How do you do this?" Very intrigued, the Sergeant Major was with this Marine. And he pulled me aside afterwards, and he's like, never pass up the opportunity to learn from a subordinate Marine. And he said, I knew everything that kid was doing. I've known it for 30-some years now, how to operate a 50 cal. But that kid did not know in his mind that I didn't know that. And it made that kid's day to be able to actually teach me something, or in his mind teach me something. And it gave me the opportunity to engage with him on that personal level, and not just get the standard when you walk through the battle spaces. You ask somebody how they're doing, they're not going to just tell you, crappy, sir. It's always going to be outstanding, sir. Have a good day, sir. But if you take that piece of advice there and never pass up the opportunity to learn from a subordinate, you'll be able to get that more engagement than just those one-liner answers. Thank you.
For me, I would say positive energy. I'm telling you, if you bring positive energy, that definitely helps the attitude of even if it's doom and gloom in a foxhole somewhere in the cold weathers of Fort Drum, New York. You go in there and try to have that electrifying attitude. Your soldiers will feel it, and they'll try to emulate that, right? And going back to Jason, or talking about never pass up the opportunity to learn from a Marine or a soldier. In the same token, never pass the opportunity to engage a soldier to make a positive impact. Thank you.
I was going to say, my advice would be authentic in everything you do, be present, and be engaged as a leader. Make sure you're present a lot more than you Zoom or you WebEx or whatever. That's extremely important. As I mentioned earlier, I love to walk the halls and talk to people. And a lot of times I find stuff on the walls that isn't supposed to be there or should have been changed out because leaders never changed out a rating scheme or put up a new policy letter or didn't swap out photos. And I'm quick to pull that leader, that command team to the side and say, hey, do you understand why we changed that stuff out? Because our young soldiers and airmen need to know what direction we're headed, who the leadership is, and what we're trying to accomplish. And if you walk down that hallway and you can't tell me what's on that wall, how many soldiers and airmen are you passing up on a day-to-day basis that may be having mental health issues, maybe having other issues, and you don't see it? You're not paying any attention to it because you surely haven't looked at the wall and noticed it hasn't been updated in a couple of years or whatever. So, but you get that by being engaged, by being present. You don't get that by a Zoom call. You can't see down the hallway, I believe so.
And finally, I would say is one, you got to love what you do. You've got it's about that's what equals commitment, and really is strive for excellence every single day. And that doesn't mean that you will ever achieve excellence. That does not mean that you will ever have made it, or that you will ever be the best at anything you do. But what it does mean is that you will be better today than you were yesterday, and that you will be better tomorrow than what you were today. That's my advice.
So we're about to transition to questions from the audience, but I just want to take a moment and again say thank you, not just for your service, I mentioned that earlier, but your content today is truly useful, inspiring, and meaningful. I don't know about folks in the room. I had a super busy week. I just got back from DC a Tuesday night and had class and lots of emails, as I mentioned, and I'm typing very quickly. And this was the best part of the week. It is truly an honor to spend time with you and share in your stories of leadership and service. So thank you. So questions from the group for this very esteemed panel.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm a student veteran here at ASU, and my question for you is, what do you think needs to be improved in the NCO Corps across all the branches? What leadership skills could be better developed in today's NCO Corps?
So I'll take the first swag at it. Fully acknowledging that the Army has a NCO professional development program, the NCO centers of for the leadership, for the education and so on and so forth, right? Is there, but what I have found out through the careers, in my view, there's a problem with ownership among our NCO non-commissioned officers. So if there's something that I would like to tell Sergeant Army Weimer that to focus on or to help solve is to help our NCOs give them the skills and perhaps a commitment to take ownership of taking care and training the soldiers, right? As a team leader, you should be wholly responsible and for the 3 or 4 soldiers that you have. And I've seen a lot of people basically just saying, oh, it's his fault, No, if your subordinate messes up, it's your fault as a leader. So that's my take.
So I would say a couple things. One I'd like to start off with is accountability. It's been a topic of conversation with my commanding officer and myself, frequently lately, as far as just speaking about the basic military discipline that we see that's somewhat faltering from what we've seen over the years, as far as the daily conduct in terms of what they wear with personal attire, haircut, shaves, just the basics, the bare root basics. And it takes us to be the bad guy or somebody who's in a staff NCO position or an officer position to make a correction when it should be that young NCO, that young E4, police your own so it doesn't come up to me or doesn't come up to an officer. But it seems like it's like, hey, I'm not in uniform, I'm not on duty, I don't have the duty belt on, I don't have the cover on. I don't know what it is, but there's no accountability as far as just being able to police your own. And it's frustrating. It is frustrating because you police your own, it definitely affects the morale of the overall unit because it gets taken care of at a lower level. And then, the second piece I would just say, as far as, just being a fair but firm leader, it's frustrating to me that I always be the bad guy as it going up, where it's denying leave or making the hard decision and telling the staff and CO that he, can't, his Marine can't do something or something's not approved. He doesn't have the hard conversation with him before. It's like, just go see the Sergeant Major. Go see the Sergeant Major. Let him be the bad guy. And, accountability and being fair but firm, on that staff NCO or that senior NCO level, as far as making those hard decisions and having the guts to be able to look the Marine or the subordinate in the eye and telling them why you're not approving something.
I would say first, let's be very clear. The American non-commissioned officer and petty officer is the most envied and powerful combat multiplying institution across the world, right? So we will self-hate on ourselves a little bit for what we don't do very well, or so, but every country that I've been in, either in humanitarian support, combat operations, or whatever it may be, or security cooperation, everyone envies what the American military has. There are many countries around the world that would never consider powering down authority, powering down decision-making, planning, and execution of the mission, whatever that mission may be, to the level and rank that we do. To someone that's 20 years old with a high school education, to be able to lead men and women to go put themselves in harm's way to solve problems. So we got to get that out there first, because nobody's got that. So, but we do beat ourselves up a little bit. To me, it's always continuously reinforcing what is a non-commissioned officer or petty officer's job, right? In Army doctrine, our job is to train, develop, lead, take care of individuals, small teams, and crews. That's it. That is everything that we do. When we tie it back to those functions, we can be successful. It's when people get off the track a little bit or veer left or right about those responsibilities, or maybe don't take those to heart, lose the commitment to that level of responsibility, forget that the first word of what a non-commissioned officer is a servant leader, right? That's when we have a little bit of a hiccup, but we're still doing pretty good.
I would say creating a culture of learning, a performance culture where we focus more on improving ourselves. And, we were just talking about enlisted leader development. And what is the path for someone who comes into the military and says, you know what, I aspire to be a sergeant major, or I want to be sergeant major of the Army. And we haven't done a good job in the past actually showing someone what that path is. Well, you need to go to BLC and ALC, and you need to do SSD2 and SSD3 or DLC. And at the end, you get to go to the nominative leadership course, which is, by the way, the first time your spouses are introduced to the military when you have 20 plus years in the military that they can actually attend a school. How many ASEP courses are there for officers?
17.
17. So we have one, NLC. So, it's, and also when I came in the military, college was something that they said, yeah, you're an NCO, you don't need to do that. That's what officers do. Officers go to college. Well, they changed the game during the middle of the game, and they said, well, if you want to compete, you need to have a high-level degree. You need to have this and that stuff. So we played a lot of catch-up, and I would beg that most of the senior enlisted force now has degrees equivalent to their officers, and in some cases maybe even higher. And but still, showing these junior enlisted leaders, these NCOs, like, okay, this is your path. You want my position. You want to be, at that level sometime. This is what you need to do. These are the assignments you need to hold. This is what I recommend, and I think the officer corps gets it much better than we do. So.
Excellent. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for Thank you so much for coming today. It's an honor to have you guys here. I don't see any blue up there, so that was a disappointment. But the question I have for you is I was able to talk to a few chiefs a few weeks ago from Luke Air Force Base about recruiting. And it sounds like there is a lot of difficulty trying to recruit these young people these days. So could you talk a little bit about the difficulty of recruiting? What is the plan or critical thinking through of how we're going to manage that? And what do you see as the future for recruiting? Thanks.
So I'll just say up front, ma'am, I wasn't a recruiter, I was a drill instructor, but I can speak on similar terms with retention. Because it's not my job to go after those entry-level individuals, but however, it's my job to advertise the Marine Corps and put it in a positive light, to make it more, sexy, for lack of better terms, for individuals that want to be able to come after joining the service. But for retention, it's a very real struggle these days amongst all the services. And it takes actually diving down to the small unit leadership, and the commanding officer and I talk about it regularly, trying to retain our best, actually getting out there into the different shops and diving down with the 05 level leadership on making sure that we're going after our best and brightest. And actually sitting down and talking with him, and not just, oh, he wants to be a cop, he wants to go back to school, he's not going to re-enlist. Well, what do you want to do? Where do you want to be a cop? If you gotta sit down and talk with a Marine, and all he wants to do is go back home to Oklahoma. What if I can get you a job to be a recruiter near Oklahoma? So actually having those conversations where you're looking at his or her career development, and potentially those two can align with the career development, the needs of the individual, and you may be able to save one of the ones says I'm getting out and be able to retain.
So from what I gather, listening to a podcast by the USOREC CG like 2 days ago, they're really transforming a few things, right? So one, they're creating the military occupational specialties, kind of like their careers, right? Of recruiters. So they're gonna build NCO and warrant officer, I guess MOSs to address the kind of like the skill needed to have a good foundation and kind of like learning things to build, so they can affect and get a lot of good practices, best practices, and so on and so forth, so they can increase recruiting. That's number one. Number two, the Army is focusing on increasing like the manning of recruiters. So right now, like about a week ago, every senior enlisted advisor here and probably commands in the Army got emails saying that we will need recruiters and we will fill them, and telling the force that some of your soldiers might be voluntold or reassigned to be recruiters. And then the other thing he said is that he needs to improve the JROTC program, because as a factoid that he said, like 70% of the JROTC programs are only in the southeast of the United States. So that's 70%. So I see that as missed opportunities, because those programs help create the awareness for exposure to the military that could eventually help enlistment or accessions to the officer corps. So by missing 3/4, and it's only 30% in there, I feel like really there's a gap there. So I think he's saying they're gonna try to build and have partnerships with high schools to increase the JROTC footprint.
All right, I'm going to jump in here because I recognize we're just a little bit over our time, and I know there's a very tight schedule moving forward. So I think we'll wrap up here. If folks want to interact with our panelists further on these questions, feel free to do that. In the meantime, thank you so much for being here and for your service.